We're taking a closer look at how escalating tensions between the United States and Turkey are impacting other countries, especially South Africa. As Ankara's currency weakens, so does Pretoria's. Both economies are struggling to overcome major hurdles.
This comes as the diplomatic spat between Turkey and the U.S. grows over detained American pastor Andrew Brunson. Ankara refuses to release him. Both countries have imposed sanctions on each other. For more on this now, we want to bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Debora Patta. She's with us from Istanbul. So, Debora, what is the latest on this diplomatic feud between the U.S. and Turkey? It seems like Turkey relented a little bit in that they put Brunson on house arrest, but they still haven't released him.
You're right, Anne-Marie. He has been placed, Andrew Brunson, the pastor, under house arrest, but his lawyer is still campaigning for a full release, and that has not happened yet. Just to take a step backward, this all began at the beginning of August when the U.S. imposed sanctions against Turkey because they refused to release Brunson. He's been accused of being a spy and of being part of a terrorist organization. And U.S. President Donald Trump has come under a lot of pressure from Christian evangelicals to deal with this issue, despite the fact that there actually are a number of other American citizens who are also behind bars. But then the tensions escalated, as it were, when the Trump administration imposed trade tariffs, doubled the tariffs on Turkish aluminium and steel. And this sent the economy spiraling. The Turkish lira was already under pressure because this country relies so heavily on foreign goods. But literally overnight, the cost of everything, petrol, gas, clothing, furniture, it all rose pretty dramatically because this country is already unstable, the currency is already volatile, and because there's so much foreign debt. So something like the doubling of trade tariffs has been really, really bad news for this country.
Debora, you're based in South Africa. How is Turkey's currency crash impacting that country?
It's an interesting question, Vlad. I mean, what is Turkey got to do with South Africa, all those miles away at the bottom of the African continent? Unfortunately for South Africa, it's grossly unfair, many would argue. But when there's a ripple in one emerging economy, it affects all the other emerging economies. And South Africa is part of a group known as the Fragile Five. It also includes Turkey, Brazil, Indonesia and India. And they all saw problems with their currency when the Turkish lira crashed. In fact, the South African rand dropped by 10%. It regained a little from that. But again, it's a country that is suffering economically. The economy has slowed down. There is hyperinflation in that country. We're seeing inflation really at high levels there. And there is unemployment in South Africa as well. So when something like this happens and the rand drops like this, businesses start feeling the pressure, job losses result. And that is simply terrible news for a country that already has such a high unemployment rate.
And this also plays into a recent controversy over land seizures in South Africa, right? And we talked a little bit about it yesterday. The president tweeted about it. He was quoting something that he saw on Fox News, and Fox News host Tucker Carlson saying that, quote, the South African government is now seizing land from white farmers. He also cited the, quote, large-scale killing of farmers. South Africa's far-left political party called the Economic Freedom Fighters spoke out against that tweet. Here's what they had to say.
We must be prepared for Donald Trump and all of them. We're not scared of them. We remain unshaken. Actually, we are more determined after the Donald Trump tweet to expropriate our land without compensation. There is no white genocide here. It's an absolute rubbish to say there is white genocide. There is black genocide in the USA. They are killing black people in the USA. There is black genocide here in South Africa. There is no scientific evidence that points to any white genocide in South Africa. It's not true. And we're not scared of such things. We're not going to be distracted by anyone. Only death will stop us. Not Trump, not poverty, not sanctions. We have all of them in our mind. We know the consequences of what we're asking for.
So, Debora, we talked yesterday, and you sort of clarified things for us that, in fact, they are not seizing land. In fact, they haven't even debated a possible piece of legislation that's kind of been floated, and nothing's happening yet. It's not a law, and there's nothing. But this has to factor in some way into South Africa's economy. How is this debate over land seizure impacting the economy there?
You're absolutely right, Anne-Marie. I mean, that was Julius Malema talking there. He's from a more radical left-wing party in South Africa. And once President Trump waded into the very racially charged land debate in South Africa, it set everybody off. You had people from the right, you had people from the left, all debating the issue. But the bottom line, as you correctly point out, is the Fox News report was wrong. Land seizure, land grabs, call them what you will, land expropriation without compensation has not begun in South Africa. Yes, the ruling party would like to reform the land bills in South Africa. They want a constitutional amendment to do so, but nothing has actually taken place yet. But that doesn't stop it affecting the markets. Once President Trump had made that tweet in which he said that he was going to ask the Secretary of State to look into the land issue in South Africa and the killing of farmers, even though it was based on an erroneous report, it affected the markets in South Africa. And the rand slumped again. People started selling off global assets. And once again, South Africa, this fragile emerging market, was affected by a tweet which wasn't actually based in a factual television report. And that is the ongoing problem. And in South Africa right now, brave talk there from Julius Malema, but actually in government circles high up, there is a fear that US could also impose sanctions against South Africa like they did against Turkey. In fact, one journalist noted in an opinion piece that President Trump almost uses sanctions and trade tariffs as missiles, launching them against people and countries that he doesn't approve of. And although it's not a new practice for presidents to do this, under the Trump administration, it has become his foreign policy weapon of choice, Anne-Marie.
It's just so interesting that things that happen in one part of the world clearly have ripple effects in other parts of the world, and the illumination of those threads are so important for our viewers to understand. Debora Patta in Istanbul for us. Thank you so much, Debora.